welcome to the Paddock Pass podcast, brought to you by Renthal Street. Check out renthal.com and the Fit My Bike tool for all the options available for your make and model of bike. On today's World Superbike podcast, we're looking back to the Czech round at Most. And Gordon Ritchie, we've got some massive breaking news. Tito Rabat and MotoX Racing have split. So Tito has once again left the team in the middle of the season.
Yes. I think the issue at hand here is that end of the day, well, I'm trying to be kind to everybody involved. That wasn't going to do much as an effort. I don't know what the individuals involved thought they were going to get out of it. I can completely understand why MotoX wanted to sign a rider of the previous calibre of Tito Rabat, and to have that level of rider and everything in that name in the team. I get it totally, especially as they've got another famous but not at the level or not the reputation so far of Tito. So I get it. And MotoX are there as an ambitious Italian private team. It's one guy's thing, and he's just determined to come racing like we need in this sport, and we always will do. So I've got no problem with that. I think the problem is the performance was. I don't know what performance they expected to have, what they thought they were going to achieve with that. But yeah, it's Tito has done this for the first time. I don't know what he expects. If he wants to see how good he is a rider in the World Superbike, he should get himself private Ducatis and see how he goes there.
It's one of those ones where obviously I start to show a little bit tongue in cheek, but for Rabat, this is exactly what everyone expected it to be. Bahatin's done a better job than Tito, which may be a little bit of a surprise how well Bahatin's done. But Rabat's performance haven't been a surprise. So it's one of those situations where, as a former Moto2 world champion, we know he's had a very good career. But this is where his career has led to. And it'll be interesting to see if he decides to ride on. And it'll be interesting, Gordo, to see who ends up replacing him. One of the rumours on the Italian media side is that Michael Ruben Rinaldi will step up from the GMT94 Supersport program. Obviously, Rinaldi's had a disastrous year so far, but he's got a lot of Superbike experience, and he did come close to being on a Yamaha Superbike for this year anyway. So maybe that's an option for Moto X, and I think that Rinaldi wouldn't be too slow in leaving that Supersport bike behind.
No, he's not made a transition back to Supersport at all. I thought maybe that would be a chance to restart, especially because all those Yamahas are different for everybody. They kind of half towards a Superbike and half towards an R6, kind of screaming, very much small capacity, more race focused bike. So I'm a little surprised, I have to say, Rinaldi's not done anything in Supersport. I wasn't surprised when it was obviously his Superbike career at a factory level was coming to and would come to an end. You have to have new riders occasionally. Michael can, if he never rides a Superbike again, Michael can hold his head up high as a 5-time race winner, privateer and factory rider. He won on the Ducati privateer in a team that wasn't much fancied at the time, at Aragon, a big balls of track. So he's got plenty of things to be proud of. He used to go toe-to-toe with Toprak and all those guys at the start of their careers.
Yeah,
good. He's obviously got talent. It's his head, his confidence, other people's belief in him, whatever. He is a quite complicated character. But maybe this Yamaha's the thing to get him going again. If it's true, I haven't heard that rumour personally, but it wouldn't surprise me because he's a rider who's not happy on a given opportunity in an Italian team with Misano coming up. With lots of things. Why not? I mean, I'm not advocating for it, but it might work out for everybody.
I'd be really interested to see what he does compared to Bahatin, because Bahatin's shown himself to be pretty solid up to now. And you throw Rinaldi in there, and then you've actually got a really good comparison to make for Bahatin. But we'll obviously have to wait and see what happens with that. One thing that did get confirmed at the weekend, Gordo, was a 5-year extension for Most. And we've got a question in from our Discord channel. So sign up on patreon.com/Paddock Pass podcast. And you can ask us questions for Superbike and MotoGP shows. But Gordo, the question was what we think of the 5-year extension for Most. I personally really enjoyed the Czech round. I think it's great. I love the fact that we go somewhere that's, a little bit backwards compared to being a Grand Prix venue. So it's one of our places. And it's a place where we can be the big show in town. And obviously Most isn't perfect. You can see that by the fact that we had so many red flags over the course of the weekend, gravel on the track. The service road issue is still ongoing. But I actually really like this round, and I'm glad that we're going to be going back again for another 5 years.
I love going to Czechia. I think it's a brilliant place. It's just another one of those unique places on the trail. As I've said before, I'm a circuit and venue junkie. You know, that's what I want. Every time they tell us there's a new circuit coming, I'm like, yes, and it's a new country. Oh, fantastic. Now, Moss might as well be a different country from Brno because it's a completely different side of Czech. Okay, it's still Czechia, but it's a totally different track. It's a unique track. Ironically, the thing that we all worried about, oh my God, the track, is actually the best thing about Most. Everything else still needs upgrading and fixing. Yeah. And they are doing it. I mean, fair dues to them, they are doing it. So I totally understand the extension to 5 years. It also justifies whoever's spending the money that they won't be, we'll put all this extra money in and then next year they have nothing. So from their point of view, and we as journalists should take everybody's point of view before we give out our own, is they need something like this to say, you know what, we'll build this, we'll do that, we'll put in that safety work. They need it. They've got investors, no doubt, that need to say, well, where's my guarantee? Where's my comeback? Where's my possibility of having 2 IDM rounds a year and whatever, as well as the other stuff? From a personal point of view, I love being there. From a personal point of view, I haven't been able to stay in the same hotel twice. I've stayed in some ropey and some really good places there. We were in €100 per head per night house where we had to move a bed from the bedroom to the living room because the design of the house was so nuts. But we also had, as a Scottish guy and an English guy, and my colleague Chippy Wood, within 100 metres of us, we had a pub and a kebab shop. So dinner was sorted every night when we went home.
The unfortunate thing about the Czech round, though, Gordo, is that you go to the pub and you can't seem to get a pint. It was only litres of beer.
No.
We devastating.
We were very, very sedate, as given our advanced years, or mine especially. No, we had a great wee time. It's a great round to go to if you've never been to that place. If you've done all your big kind of bigger countries and stuff, Czech's great. It's such a nice place. It's not expensive. I'm sure Prague's expensive, but everywhere else around, it's like not that dear for certain things. Even we stopped on the way back to the airport. We didn't have any breakfast in it, so we stopped for a bit of brunch, lunch, whatever you call it. And we had a couple of very local meatloaf things with some bread and everything else. Coffee and 2 bottles of water each, and it was €8 or something. It was nothing because it was like in a truck stop place, but it was absolutely a slice of Czech life. And it was nothing wrong with it. The food was fine. It was made in the bag. It was proper. It was fine. So I love going, and I'm glad we're going there for 5 years. But I can't understand why it's such a difficult place to find repeating hotel rooms in. And I can't understand why there's no media centre. The media weren't happy at this round. For the first time. We've had moans about it before, but the race has been so good. I don't think anybody left Moss thinking, wow, what a great place. Okay, you've got to give a little bit more because everything isn't laid on a plate for you like a lot of the traditional and long-term venues. But I'm always fighting the cause of the underdog, always, every time. And I love the fact that we go there. But I don't think there's anybody that would swap Moss for Brno.
Yeah.
But I don't want to not go to Czech.
Yeah.
And they do need to do safety before we finish. We do need to do, there's still 2 or 3 places in that track that need to be made safer for the rider should the worst happen in the worst place. And that is a battle we should have won 20 years ago.
Yeah. I think it's one of those ones where everyone would prefer to be in Brno for a lot of different reasons. The track is just unbelievable in Brno. But I love the fact that we've got 2 great venues for 2 totally different championships, 2 totally different vibes in the same country. And I thought it was great as well, Gordo. You see President Pavel there on Sunday.
Yeah.
And he rides his bike to the track. He takes his cameras. He's got his photographer's vest. And he's down there shooting the third one and then gets himself back for the podium and then gives the trophies out, whips out his camera and starts shooting the podium as well.
No, I mean, this is how much it means to that area, to him, to everything else. The crowd was disappointing until Sunday. I think this crowd on Sunday, if I remember right, was banging. Yep. But the rest of the weekend, and don't forget, the weather was a bit rubbish. So, yeah, I as I say, I don't think, I'm happy to be going there. But I think that they've told us at the beginning, "There'll be a media centre, blah blah blah." We're not going to get a media centre there. We'll be working out of a tent as if it's a motocross race.
Yeah.
They need to take things like that seriously, or they will end up with people not being so happy. They've got a 5-year contract now. They need to do all these things, and they're the nicest people in the world, by the way. All the people on the deck, the guys that were disassembling the seat around me, I was the last journalist to leave as usual. I've known them now. They're like, you finished earlier this year, and I've met them over the last few years because I've been the last guy in the media centre while they disassemble around me. Shades of Argentina has happened many times before as well when we were in a tent. But they also told us in their brand new £5 bazillion racetrack built in the middle of a redevelopment area that we'd have a media centre and we never had one, and we don't go there anymore. So, and I'm not moaning about my personal position. This is the thing. Everybody has a bit of a kind of, this didn't work, the power went out. They need to sort all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like permanently, not if they've got a 5-year contract now, no excuses next year or the next 5 years. If you're going to have generators, make them work properly. No excuses.
Just to move it on to the weekend as well, Gordo, we've obviously got a lot to get through. We're going to kick things off straight away with the big talking point, and that was Toprak and Bulega. And this was a track where Toprak had to dominate, was the expectation coming into the weekend. He had the pole position. He won race 1. He won the Super Pole race. But what actually happened in race 2, because one of our Patreon supporters, some guy called David Emmett, I think it is.
Really?
Yeah, motorsports.com or
motormatters.com.
I don't know. I don't know the guy. I want to be that perfectly clear.
I think we'd hunted all them
with the Paddock Pass podcast.
I think we'd hunted all them to extinction years ago.
So did I. But David, I think was his name. He's asked, why was Toprak wheeling so much on the last couple of laps?
The problem is, I think that Toprak was having, as he said later, this is why when he crossed the line, you can see him pointing at the fuel tank with 2 fingers kind of furiously. He was having some kind of glitch. He affirmed in his press conference when he was so disappointed, but also such a gentleman as ever. He wasn't throwing the toys out the pram. Basically, there was fuel in the bike at the end, so it wasn't they were running out of fuel. They told us they knew that much already by the time. Quite quickly after the race, he got to see the media. So on Sunday night, they'd know a lot more. There'd be analysis done and data and stuff. But he confirmed there was fuel in the bike, so they weren't running out of fuel. But he had some kind of issue at the end where the bike was missing. We saw over the line, he might still have been the winner if his bike hadn't popped a little early and then obviously dropped down. You see it dropping down and then going again. Even just coming out the last corner, he might just have hung on. So he did have a small issue, not enough to destroy him, but his lap time, was a bit heavier. So yeah, he had some issue right at the end. And that's his problem. I mean, it is a problem. It's a problem for the team. Let's not forget, Bulega had 2 non-finishes, not his fault, in Assen when he was in a strong position. It should have been a triple for Toprak. He did enough to win the race, but you've got to take your hat. I'll let you deal with this one, but you've really got to take your hat off to Bulega for sticking with it. He never gave up, tried his hardest, realised he was still close enough to be anything stupid, even just running on in the chicane, and the race would have been his. And just because of a small problem for his rival, but a big effort from him. He said he rode like 150% all the race because he just didn't want Toprak to get a triple. And lo and behold, just because he did that, he was in a position to win by 0.027 seconds, if memory serves me. I mean, that's close, eh?
It was, for me, it's very clear that Toprak has some sort of an issue. We can see that pretty clearly. But it's also one of those things where, for me, Bulega wins the race. And just because he was willing to put it all on the line for those extra 5 points and keep Toprak honest in the hope that something goes wrong, and something did go wrong. I don't think Toprak loses that race if his bike is 100%. His bike was 99% at the end of the race, but Bulega was right there and on it and able to take advantage of that. Every time we rode on board, I said it with about 4 laps to go on the broadcast, that final sector, you could see that Bulega was 2-3 tenths of a second faster in those last couple of corners than Toprak coming into the last lap. So I wasn't too surprised whenever he had the bit of a run on Toprak out of the final corner. but it's always a bit of a surprise if anyone's able to make that run stick down to the line. So that's where you think that there was probably something there for Toprak. But regardless of that, Bulega's proved again just how good he is. And I think for me, one of the big throwaway comments from the weekend was Danilo Petrucci. And Petrucci just said, I want to see both of these guys in MotoGP. They both deserve an opportunity. Yeah. And I didn't think I'd ever say that about Bulega. You know, whenever he stepped up from Supersport, I thought it was, well, he's had the best bike in Supersport. He's had this, he's got the team, he's got blah, blah, blah. Chaz Davis told me at the end of that season, you're going to be surprised by what Nico does on the Superbike. And I was shocked last year. I'm not surprised anymore because he's shown just how good he is. And I'd love to see him get a chance when we move to the Pirelli tyres, put him back into VR46 Ducati or whatever it is. But I think that he's going to go into his contract negotiations with Ducati where he will be demanding that he's treated as the 2025 world champion. And it'll be interesting to see just how much weight he throws around.
Yeah, well, I mean, he might stumble on Ducati because Ducati are notoriously hard on the riders. The Ducati became the new Honda, you know, in terms of rider negotiations. It was always like, we've got the best bikes and the best setup and the best everything. You know, they wouldn't necessarily pay the best money unless you were Mick Doohan or somebody that was going to guarantee the world championship every year. So maybe that's you know, and again, let's not overplay our hand as success in Superbike means anything to anybody whatsoever in MotoGP. It traditionally hasn't meant anything. Do they deserve a chance? Yeah, so have a lot of riders. They never got it, and they might not get it again. They are our big two now. Bautista, and it is partly because of the weight thing. He really does struggle. It's not an excuse anymore. We now know that. As we knew that part of the reason he was winning and over-winning and over-winning when he first came in World Superbike on the Ducati is, one, the bike was faster than everything else. He was who he was, and it proved how good a rider he was in MotoGP. But also because he weighed nothing, and there was no weight penalty then. There was no penalty against the Ducatis whatsoever. And Ducati said that from the beginning. We were going, wow, it's an ability. The bike must be unbelievable. He says, yeah, the bike's great, but it's only him that's doing it. And he was right. You know, it was only him that was doing it. And it's because he weighed nothing. So he's now got weight to carry, but he's also got to carry it on the bike. So he's out of the top three. You know, hasn't. You know, he's still not won a race. He's still not been there this year. He's still not. He's not been in the position to win races, let's say, all year. Would you expect him to? Maybe you expect him to be third every time. But he's not been anyway. He's done some amazing rides. One of his rides at Most was astounding. But it's a big two. They should get a chance in any kind of sporting hierarchy. They would get the chance to move from European to World Championship, from American to World Championship. And it just doesn't happen, even though the owner of MotoGP is the owner of Superbike. So that's the biggest issue. If Dorna wanted those guys there, they would take them there. They don't want them there, and I don't understand it. I would hope that both of them do get a chance because I think all those guys, Ray, needed a chance to go. Chaz did his GPs before he came to Superbike, but when you go through the list of riders, let's go back all the way through history. Loads of those riders deserve to get a chance at GP. Some of them did. Most of them didn't succeed for one reason or another. Because MotoGP riders are attracted at a younger age to the biggest class. Now that's become a literal factory where all the riders are in MotoGP, bar the one or two, are interchangeable. You could get rid of two and bring in two kids from Moto2 and it would make no difference to the championship. There's so many good riders there. This is why they're not. No one's sitting there going, I have to have Bulega and I have to have Toprak.
Yeah.
But they to me are good enough. And with the Pirellis, with the 850s, all this stuff, they should go as soon as possible and see how it goes. Toprak will give any team in that championship massive publicity instantaneously.
I think when you
Bulega's a better rider than we think.
Yeah. And I think, Gordo, when you look at it, one of the things I always find quite interesting is when anyone wants to talk about Superbike riders coming across, the first name they say is, Ben Spies didn't make it work. He was a world champion and he couldn't make it work. We're going, back quite a few years, but Ben won a Grand Prix. Ben won a Premier Class Grand Prix. You look at Cal Crutch, though. Crutch is always forgotten about as being a Superbike rider. You know, everyone just seems to think that he appeared in the MotoGP paddock. Supersport world champion, super fast on a Superbike for his 1 year that he did. And over time, it's been forgotten that this 3-time Grand Prix winner, big name in the class, that he's a Superbike project. or a superbike product. And he was brave at the time to just say, fucking, I'm going to MotoGP. I'm going to back myself and hope it's all going to work out. And for him, he's been able to do that. He made his career work. And I think Toprak's got the same attitude that regardless of what I'm offered now, I'm going to go. Because when we've talked to him, he's talked a lot about the fact that if I go to MotoGP and it doesn't work out, I still come back here and have a great superbike career for the next part of my career. So I think he'll jump at anything. And that anything could be a Pramac Yamaha if Jack Miller leaves, or Miguel Oliveira as well if his contract is terminated. It could be an Aprilia if Jorge Martin leaves. And you never know what's going to happen. And I think it'd be really interesting to see what would happen if Toprak went. And I hope he gets the chance. But if he doesn't, I don't think he's going to have any regrets about it, because he's put himself in the shop window. He's put himself on the line and he's made it perfectly clear what he wants to do. And I think that's what makes him quite interesting. And a lot more similar to Crutch, though, than a lot of other riders, because Cal went and he took a contract where the money wasn't great because he backed himself that over time it would work for him. And I think Toprak's willing to do the same.
Yes, and remember that Crutchlow was backed by people. He had a lot of people that believed in him. The number one reason that he went to MotoGP and had a successful MotoGP is Cal Crutchlow, because he just wanted to go. He just wanted to go. You talk about to the Lowe's boys, you know, and Alex has said before, look, Sam just said, I want to go to MotoGP. I want to race in MotoGP. Now, it ended up being Moto2 mostly, with a little bit of MotoGP in there. But he won lots of races. He had a very successful career. He was considered one of the top Moto2 riders for a very long time. He gave it his absolute best shot and was a World Supersport champion before. So there's another one that came from us that went to them. So, yes, I think Toprak should go if he gets any kind of chance, because he's got such self-belief. He's got this whole Turkish racing project thing behind him. He's an incredibly charming, lovely pet. They're going to love him over there. Why wouldn't they? He brings an entire part of the world on board to MotoGP in a personal level. You can have races in Asia all you like, but there's not that many riders, and he's a rider from a totally a massive country that's literally straddles between Europe and Asia, and he's got a huge following. There's no reason. There's no reason not to take Toprak if you were a outsider looking in. You think, why is this guy not in MotoGP? And his talent is different and huge, and therefore he could make something. Remember Gary McCoy? Gary McCoy, rider in MotoGP, in 500 GPs, okay, yeah, good rider, everybody knows, proper rider, can't argue, blah, blah, blah. And you make one small technical change and he suddenly jumps on it with his unique riding style. Wins race, becomes this megastar, the number one name.
Yeah.
There's no reason why Toprak can't find something on a MotoGP bike that no one else has found. Not because he's such a huge talent, but he rides like no one else. And for me, that kind of style suits better brakes, suits better, grippier tyres, more race-focused, hard tyres. The whole thing's in some ways made for him. And but the last thing that's missing from his side is, does he really want to go? And I think you've nailed it there. I think now he's thought, you know what? He's won on in one brand of machine in World Superbike. He's won on another. He's already a legend. So let's try this MotoGP thing.
I think for me it's interesting as well when you look at the Grand Prix paddock, and Moto2 is a good example of it right now, because we've seen Manuel Gonzalez, and Gonzalez has 5 podiums out of 6 races. He's won 3 races this year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not looking to put him on a MotoGP bike next year, you have to question what's going on in the Grand Prix paddock, because he can easily go in and do a good job on one of the, let's say, the Trackhouse Aprilia or whatever it would be. Jake Dixon's a good example of it as well. Obviously, Jake's had a very up and down Grand Prix career, but over the course of 100 Grand Prix or whatever it is, he's won 5 or 6 races. He must have 20 podiums already at this stage, and I don't know, half dozen pole positions as well. He's a superbike product as well. And you look at Fermin Aldeguer, and obviously Aldeguer came through from the Junior GP Moto2 class, but don't forget, he's a stock 600 rider originally, and he's been able to put himself onto a MotoGP podium now. I think that there's always going to be that negativity coming from superbike racing, but if people have an open mind, they could see that there's some crazy talent coming through as well. And That's not even taking into account the likes of Huertas winning a Supersport championship. And if he had stayed in the Superbike paddock, he's probably on that second Aruba Ducati next year.
I worked a lot of years in MotoGP as well as Superbike in the kind of era when we went from 2 strokes to 4 strokes. And I did, quite a lot of races over 4 seasons, as well as all the Superbikes. So I got a real viewpoint on the both, as lots of people nowadays do. There seems to be a lot more media, whatever, people who can and will work over both things, like yourself, Steve. You're on the MotoGP podcast. You take as much an interest in that as anything else. And the trouble is that it's not a trouble. It's just the fact is that MotoGP is very elitist. They're very, very elitist. They because it's the top thing. The mentality is that everybody who's there is there by right. They work themselves into this communal mindset of everybody in MotoGP is there because everything is the best. And obviously, most people are in MotoGP because they're the best. It doesn't matter whether they are riders or anything else. That's a fact. I understand that. It's the big class. The problem is that when you start getting to the stage of regarding some people's MotoGP riders and other people's not, you end up missing out on the odd talent here and there. And it also ends up that riders will be there for ages and have moved from one team to another team to another team, having proved what? Having proved that they're a decent enough rider. And I think what's maybe missing, and I understand financially and everything else, there's a lot of teams out there are thinking, who you sign for next year when they're looking for sponsors, and they go, some guy from Superbike, and the sponsors go, oh, never heard of him. And whereas they take, the guy who's been in 3 different manufacturers and really had 1 podium 5 years ago, but we'll take him. And you can't tell what's going to happen in MotoGP more than you do in World Superbike. Zarco's a 2-time Moto2 champion and went to MotoGP, has pulled off some astounding stuff. I mean, amazing, some of the stuff he's done when he's won races and that. But week in, week out, where is he? And it's not he's a worse or better rider. It's that circumstances change around. And I think there's actually much more possibility of riders to win a MotoGP race on the Rock Up in a weekend than there is anybody outside the now top 2, previous top 3, previous top 3. When you go back year by year by year, there's been 2 or 3 standout riders in the right bikes and teams winning World Superbike races. You look at that in the last few years. We're not as open a championship for the pure race wins as we'd like to be anymore. But that's because of the riders. And if those riders are so much better than everybody else in Superbike, they should go to MotoGP. The FIM should flex its muscles instead of taking over certain aspects of things. They should look at that and say, no, our job is to make sure all the best riders in the world go to MotoGP or motocross or any other discipline they're in. I think there's an completely artificial logjam on riders coming in to MotoGP. And that's allowing for a thing I've always said is that the gap between MotoGP and Superbike has got bigger over the years. Not the height, not the jump. The jump has always been there and is still there. You have to go better. You have to be better. It's a higher level. I'm not arguing that. What has changed is that the stretch of distance between the two, psychologically, technically, you name it. Yep. And that needs to be changed. But I don't see why somebody, a second team in MotoGP, wouldn't bite the hand off Toprak to get him there. And Bulega on a Ducati in MotoGP, why not?
I think I would love to see, obviously Toprak has shown over a number of years that he deserves that chance. I now actually really want to see Bulega get a chance. Obviously he'll get his MotoGP testing with Ducati next year. I said it on the broadcast this weekend. There's been too many details about when he can be on that bike next year for it not to have already been decided. So he'll get his testing next year and he'll get the opportunity. So that'll be interesting to see. Just to mention as well, Danilo Petrucci might have had 170, 180 Grand Prix starts in the Premier class. He's a stock 600, stock 1000 rider. They've got the opportunity from the CRT days.
Exactly.
And it kind of brings us in. This is a question that we had from Marcel asking about the gap between Toprak and Bulega and the rest of the field this weekend. And it brings us to Petrucci because Petrucci finishes on the podium in all 3 races. He has a really strong weekend, but we ended up seeing just some great battles between himself and Sam Lowes in particular. It was a really interesting race for both of them. And I think after all of those races where they were battling against each other, the Super Bowl race and race 2, both riders said, if you made one mistake, it was going to be punished. And that's basically what happened. Petrucci came out on top of that battle.
Yeah, it was fascinating to see two privateer teams, both running Ducatis. All the Ducatis seem to get to see each other's data. They all help each other. There's been a change in the Mark VDS team. But when that whole team was announced and they said that Sam Lowes was going to be on it, everybody was like, okay, well, there you go. Nobody thought, well, that'll be a disaster or that'll fail. But it was a hard year last year. They make one or two changes in the background of that team. They're on basically the same level, if you like, of equipment, like for like, and against their rivals. And look at what Sam's doing now. You know, he's not going to be great every race. He was the same in Moto2. Brilliant one weekend, maybe not the next. But that was brilliant to see him come in and do that. Petrucci, who started with us, went to MotoGP for a long time, a lot of races, won a race, and then comes back and has another flush of career. What we seem to be missing in Superbike is the younger riders who are pushing them on, because you can't call Petrucci and Sam Lowes, anything except veteran riders now, or heavily experienced riders. It's the younger riders that we have occasionally struggled with. We might move on later to some of them that are going to come through. But yeah, that racing between those two at the weekend was great because it was close. Every time they put the camera on them, they were right with each other. That's what you want. And if you have that 5 times down the field and the TV director's doing his job properly and shows you those races while the top two are just having a bit of a rest in the battles. But the racing was one of the races was very processional except for Bautista. I mean, it was like everybody started and finished where they finished.
Yeah.
We get dull races in Superbike as much as anybody else. Let's not kid ourselves. But the gap from the top two to everybody else is because of the riders and the teams and the effort they're put in. But Michael van der Mark, look at, van der Mark's a perfect system. The Ducatis, as long as the Ducatis, there's one other Bimota. It's ridden by Michael van der Mark, who's won multiple races, who was a Supersport champion, a Superstock 600 champion. And I think it shows the effect of an injury on a career, because when he should still have been growing, he was just fighting to get back on the bike and then fighting to be fit. But if you want an indication of how much better Razgatlioglu, a rider, is than everybody else in World Superbike, then you can look at him. And I mean, in the points championship, when you look at race by race, Toprak's not going to be threatened by Van der Mark. And honestly, at the moment, what's changed from last year is that Bulega's not being threatened by anybody, even his teammate, even his 2-time world champion and 1-time MotoGP 125 champion teammate, who's still burning to do well. He's not taking the money and rolling round. He's frustrated as hell that he can't get the bike to do what he wants.
It's an interesting one, Gordo, because it kind of brings us into the big talking points around the paddock right now as well about the rider market for next year.
Aye.
Because it's happened a lot earlier this year than it normally would, because Toprak's trying to push for that MotoGP seat. Obviously, Toprak is the linchpin around everything else sets. But Bautista, by the rumours in the paddock, are that Bautista's been offered a 6-figure contract by Ducati. But by 6 figures, I mean very low 6 figures. And it's almost the same offer that they made to Chaz Davis or they made to Scott Redding, where you're hoping that the rider refuses it. You're giving them the excuse to walk away. But if they get him for, 150 grand a year, Ducati are going to get a double world champion with a brand new bike that might all click into place next year. And then we get Bautista back at the front as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone like Bautista, if he's been remotely sensible with his financial dealings, doesn't race for the money anymore. You want the money because that's your worth. You don't want to feel you've been, as we say up here, I don't know if this is a general expression that people understand in the world, taking a loan off. That someone's just taking you for granted and underpaying you and exploiting you effectively. That's what I mentioned earlier about Ducati. They're really hard with these things because they know, and especially now, everybody just wants to be on the best Ducatis because that's your first big ticks to be a race winner or a potential world champion. In any class you're in now, you get the best Ducati, you're in pole position before you started. It would be really interesting, but Bautista just wants to race, and he's also one of these guys who's been doing it that long. He might not know what to do with himself when he finishes. None of them know what to do with themselves when they finish, and that goes from mid-pack BSB riders to professional proper riders who've done it for a long time. It's the main source of income and the main source of their life, their work. They can honestly say, I am a motorbike racer. which does go down a bit to people, and a lot of them don't automatically find a role afterwards. So I think there's a fear thing. What do I do after? So they want to keep racing, but there's a pride thing. Hold on, I'm a double champion. You're offering me, what the chief accountant in a mid-sized company is getting for a salary. Hold on. But that's the trouble. Money's money, and you need money's a source of pride for people. If you don't get paid well, you might as well go and take a more menial job.
Yeah,
and it's the same for motorbike racers.
It's interesting as well, Gordo, because Jonathan Rea is basically coming out and saying the same thing, that he just wants to win. He wants to have a chance to win.
Yeah.
And Johnny knows that there's no one knocking down the door to put €1 million in front of him for next year. So he just wants to be on a bike that's going to give him a chance to be competitive. Now, with that being the case, he has to be looking at BMW if Toprak leaves. He has to be looking at Ducati if Bautista leaves. He has to be looking at an independent Ducati if that's the case. And it's interesting, actually, that one of the rumours that I heard as we left the paddock on Sunday was that Scott Redding and Bonovo seem to be on a little bit of the struggle bus right now. And part of that comes down to the fact that Scott's already made it perfectly clear that he's paying for his ride this year. But by all accounts, there's been a few delays getting his payments from BMW for the last year of his contract. That seems to have an impact on the Bonovo team as well and their structure for this year. So there's a lot of question marks about a lot of different teams in that independent scrap as well. Ian One has been very vocal about what he perceives as being a lack of investment from Go 11 and a lack of top tier talent in the pit box for him. So nothing's a given really for where a lot of riders end up for next season.
Did I say something earlier about elitism of MotoGP riders who seem to think that the world should revolve? That's unfair. Some MotoGP riders feel that the world should revolve around them forever and a day because they're a MotoGP rider. There's at least one of those people there, and I think we know which one, would fit that description to a T, who wants to go back to MotoGP tomorrow, thinks that he's the best rider in the world. And when he rides the way he can, is brilliant, just wonderful, and a true character and everything else, as is Scott, but it's just not happening. It's not happening for anybody in any level there, and that's a real disappointment because I think everybody thought, well, Ian One is only going to get better, Go 11 are only going to get better, everything's going to get better after last year when they kind of overperformed from what they thought, we kind of half expected winning the race. I mean, it was awesome. And the same with Scott, but Scott's always been up and down, and that's his problem in his career. Should have been Moto2 champion, it all went wrong at the end.
Yeah,
he still had the same tools at hand and everything else. Brilliant one week, not so great the next week. I can't explain it. I don't know if anybody can. If they could, they would have sorted them out and sent them on their way. But yeah, well, I mentioned earlier, money's money, and I think it's not it's harder to come by and harder to get, and everybody has to hold on to it because we're not in great times. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in racing. MotoGP as well, which I think is part of the reason why there's so many people keen to bring Liberty on board, because they all need more money from outside sources because they've completely sucked the juice out of every possible orange and lemon that they can get their hands on. And it's not quite, it's okay, but it's better than Superbike. But Superbike's then trying to scrabble around for what? Industry money? New sponsors from outside? No. You're not getting enough TV exposure and everything else. The racing in Superbike is fantastic. The level of teams and the riders we got in World Superbike is fantastic. The level of budget for everything, from the organisers, the manufacturers. The manufacturers are keeping it going, and everybody should understand that. The people who are in World Superbike are there because they really want to be. It would be much easier for Honda to leave than to stay. And if Toprak goes to BMW, especially if he goes with BMW, if that's still a possibility, why should they stay in World Superbike? Well, they should, for technical reasons, to be the best Superbikes in the world and in every other class that runs Superbike. All manufacturers to be in World Superbike, the question is which level and how much you're expecting them to spend and how much you're expecting them to support the World Championship, which seems to be the issue. The industry is supporting itself in World Superbike because there's very little money coming from outside, unless you are, for example, Moto X guy, or another.
And Gordo, just to finish off a little bit of this chat as well about the impact that the manufacturers can have. But Moto confirmed their lineup for next year, and they've also confirmed a big rider development for the end of the season.
Oh, sorry. Right. I misunderstood you there. Sorry for the delay. I've managed to verbally at least. Sorry, I thought you were talking about racing still. My God,
nobody cares about
I'm
Bassani
thinking,
and Lowe's for
what
signing for a year.
have I
Gordo,
missed?
tell us about your
What have I
deal with
missed?
Bermuda.
God almighty, don't do that to me. I thought I've missed something really key. No, long story short is because of the way the races fall, the last 3 rounds of the year are all in Iberia. Aragon, Agap, then Estoril, Portugal, west coast of Portugal, then Jerez, southwest of Spain. And I'm thinking, well, that was like a bit of a kind of nearly a circle. Oh, I did 2 seasons in Spain for the COVID years on a bike. Oh, there's a nice new Bimota Terra, Tara, single R, as I keep spelling it wrong because my spell check machine's psychotic, will not let me spell it with 1 R. And I said, look, what's the chances of getting a loan on this bike and I'll do a little tour around Spain, follow the races, go to the west coast. I've never been to the northwest coast of Spain, to the extreme northwest, and then northern Portugal, where apparently some of the absolute best motorcycle roads in the world are. And it's September, October. It's still doable. It's not January, February. So I put the question and it's been verbally agreed that, I can borrow the bike and do a series of stories and stuff, and take it to the races and do all the things. So, it just seemed like a perfect choice. I tried to do it last year with another manufacturer, and for one reason or another, it just petered out a little bit because we had basically the same run. But yeah, that should be. It's all verbal at the minute, but the agreement's been made, and there you go. If anybody wants to get involved in that, from coverage to anything else, then give me a shout, because we want to obviously get the maximum exposure for them, for the trip, for everything. But yeah, it's happening unless they decide not to, but they have agreed it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on, Gordo. I know you really enjoyed riding your bike around Europe for a couple of seasons, so that's going to be exciting to see how that is. And it was exciting for us as well when we had Rennie Skaesbrook on the Paddock Note show for our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Paddock Pass podcast. Rennie from Cycle News was able to ride Toprak's World Superbike, and he was able to give us his feedback on what it was like to ride that bike, understand how it was set up as well, and the different things that Toprak does on the bike. So that was quite cool. So check that out on Patreon as well. Gordo, we're going to finish off the show with a little bit of the discussion about the crashes that we saw this weekend, because Friday started off with just a bone-crushing free practice 1 session. We had Andrea Iannone ruled out of action after his crash. We had a ride-through penalty for Remy Gardner for crashing Andre Yallows with Iannone. We had Jonathan Rea Locatelli. Bulega had a massive crash as well. And that free practice 1 session was just crazy. And then when we went into the race weekend, we were seeing turn 1 crashes. There was a big turn 1 crash with Bautista, one of the Honda riders, and then Locatelli and Van der Mark in race 1. Then we obviously had the Jonathan Rea crash, and Rea with Vierge and Alvaro Bautista. Rea was given a double long lap penalty, and Johnny was quite aggrieved about that penalty. Same as Remy actually felt that by letter of the law, he should have been given a double long lap rather than a ride-through penalty. But I wanted to ask you about that Johnny crash, because that was a really interesting one, because it's 3-1. It's bad corner design, bad track design that leads to the amount of incidents that we have in Most. But why was Johnny given a penalty for that, but there wasn't a penalty in race 1?
I've absolutely no idea. Sometimes you just can't work out what the thinking is of the stewards and the people behind the scenes.
Would you have given a penalty for it, Gordo?
I think it depends which side of the bed I get out of. I'm either very, very strict, just follow the rules and no nonsense, to, well, that's no fault of his. Okay, he's done it wrong, but it's no fault of his. What can you say? If you're going to have rules, enforce them. But the trouble is that the sanctions aren't written down exactly. It's up to the jury or the organisers to say, okay, no, we're going to introduce 2 long lap or 1 long lap. There is no, as far as I can see, sliding scale. So me, like everybody else, are probably the wrong guy to ask, because it's not like I know what the penalty should be, the scale should be, and everything else, because we've become, because of all these rules and stuff, it's become like football. somebody makes a foul on another player and you say, oh, that's a yellow card, straight, that's a straight red. And everybody's got an opinion. But, handling the ball outside the box, apparently, I haven't seen any of the FA Cup in England. Apparently, the keeper handled outside the box with another forward inches away from the ball, bearing down on goal, denial of a goal scoring opportunity, handling outside the box. See ya. And he stayed on and played on and apparently helped him win the game. So, no, the rules and regs are not. The rules and regs are there, but sometimes they're not enforced.
I think it's
interesting. The penalties is still a grey area.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
I think it's interesting, Gordo, that this is now 4 times this season where Bautista's been involved in a first lap crash. There was the Scott Redding one in Portimao, where from the angles that we can see, I'd apportion a bit more blame on his impatience. It's a racing incident, but it was his impatience that led to that. There was a crash with Sam Lowes, where he held his hands up and admitted the fault for that. There's the race one here in Most, where you have that incident with Locatelli and Van der Mark. Both of them ruled out from that crash. Then you have this one with Ray. And he's in the wrong place because he keeps qualifying in the wrong place, very obviously. That's causing his biggest issue. Yeah. But for this one with Ray, I wouldn't have been surprised if there was no penalty given for this, just because it's Johnny. He's a 6-time world champion. And we know that he is still probably the most aggressive rider out there, as well as Toprak. And we saw that again this weekend. Starting from the 5th row for each race, he's up inside the top 8 on lap 1 in every race. So he had done this in race 1 and the Super Pole race. And Johnny said afterwards, I ran over that curb each time. That's just the way I'd been doing the start. And it worked each time. There's no intention for him to take anyone out. There's no intention to cause a crash. He knows that this is his only chance to be able to be a factor in the race. And the fact that he got himself up to 5th position, I was really disappointed when the penalty came through. I know that on the broadcast, Alex said the same, that, you can see him taking that inside curb. So he expected Ray to get a penalty. I kind of hoped Ray wouldn't get a penalty because I thought it was one of those 50-50 ones, maybe 55-45, but, it wasn't an egregious one. And if he hadn't had the penalty, we actually would have seen Johnny able to compete. I
couldn't agree with you more in terms of that. In the purely human side, it was like, well, we're going to see how Johnny's going to go. Because if he dropped back to where he finished, just naturally, you'd say, okay, something's not right, set up, whatever. But his lap times were all right. He could have, in fighting for that position, he could have found another bit in himself. We could see how fit he is, truly. How much pressure he can put through the pegs, all that. The camera would be on him more, so you would actually be able to get a better idea of how he's riding, because you'd follow him for more laps if he was up there. And I think in every level it was disappointing. That the incident happened, which is partly track design, but things like that would happen in the first lap in any track design. However wide the first corner is, however slow. We used to have really big wide first corners and stopped doing it because when there was an accident, everybody was going really fast. At least now when we have those accidents in the funneling in type of first corners, everybody's going slow. There is no perfect solution when you're trying to get 23 bikes into one line corner, or even 2 or 3 line corner on the first lap. So the track design, yes, but what can you do about it? There'd still be an incident in the first corner every time.
Yeah.
So, but Johnny's situation, I feel bad that it happened. But when you dive up the inside, unless you know exactly what bit of tarmac's happening and you know who's coming over and how soon, because someone on a wide line has then got to cut back over. So they're all going for the same bit of tarmac. Yeah. So if you go up the inside, to me, you would need to be past everybody to then decide, you know what, I'm going to keep this as tight as I can and then go wide on the way out. So, but I could look at that thing in a week's time or a year's time and go, oh no, maybe.
Totally different, yeah.
Not totally different, just, oh no, I realise that, oh.
I think that's one of the things that's always quite subjective about the steward's decision. Sometimes it's very easy to make a decision and say, right, that deserves this penalty. One person is clearly at fault. Sometimes it's a little bit different. So there's always nuance in it. But it'd be interesting to see the unfiltered this weekend from worldsbk.com, because I'm sure that it'll be involved in it.
Oh, yes.
Because the media debrief was pretty funny by all accounts. I was obviously doing 300 commentary at the time. But when Bautista came in and said that Johnny offered an apology, but he didn't want to, Bautista didn't seem to want to take it. And then Johnny saying that I offered my apology. I didn't want to lecture about safety. And leaving it like that. So I'm really keen to see what that's like because I've only read the quotes. So obviously check that video out, and we'll have plenty of other content for World SBK because we've got 4 weeks off, Gordo, before Misano.
Well, three weekends unless my counting's gone wrong. So
all I know is I've got a holiday this weekend.
Three weekends and then Misano. 1, 2, 3. I've got a wall planner here and at least 3 fingers still working. So I think we're 3 weeks.
There. Well, that's not too bad, Gordo. I've got a holiday coming up now, and then I'm off to the TT.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Donegal.
On holiday?
The sunny northwest. I'll go up and I'll see if the weather holds for another few days.
Are you going to take some fiddle lessons in that? Wicked fiddlers up there.
I don't need to take any fiddle lessons, Gordo. I've obviously been a violinist for a long time.
Yeah, so... I know, and sending in your own tax returns.
Aye, well, I did that bit of fiddling anyways. That's grand. I think the bigger question mark is whether I'll get away with taking the golf clubs. I'm not sure Neve's going to agree to that one.
Yeah, you'll be wearing them, mate. You'll be wearing them.
I'll probably try and hide them in the boot of the car.
Do you need to teach her how to be a caddy? And the world's perfect.
Be a caddy.
Well,
I'm trying to teach her how to play golf, Gordo, but we'll see how that goes. And then I've got the TT, so I'm out to see TT Tony Goldsmith for a week, and then come back from that midway through race week, and then get ready to go to Pisano. So it's all go.
Am I the only person that's really quite worried about the TT this year because the weather in this? And I'm not that far from the TT.
It's been so good, the weather.
Unbelievable. That it's got to break soon, and I do not want it breaking in the first week in June. Thanks very much. The weather, honestly, if people don't understand, the weather in Scotland, Ireland, and that northern area of the UK and the Isle of Man, exactly where the Isle of Man is, between all those countries, the island at the bottom and then the UK countryside at the other side, is it's notoriously fickle. It's grey. It rains. July can be October. And it's just been like the med. It's like being on holiday for 3 weeks here. It's ridiculous.
The thing that's class about the TT whenever the weather's out, we had it, I think, 2018, and there was so much rubber down on the track. And the TT's amazing because when the roads are open, everything looks really narrow and small and tight and horrible. And then the second the roads close and you don't hear any traffic, you don't hear any cars or bikes or anything, it becomes a racetrack. And the course it just looks beautiful. And the ribbon running all the way around the island.
Yeah.
But it looks super wide once the roads are closed. And it looks really wide on a summer's day whenever we've had 4 or 5 days of loads of practice, loads of rubber down. And there's just black lines all across the road, and it looks amazing. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing next week. So hope to God that the weather holds up, because on the 26th of May, we get underway. And it's going to be great to be able to see that. We've actually got some TT video passes to give away as well. So we're going to try and have a competition for that for our Patreon supporters. So keep an eye on your Patreon inbox, and we'll see if you're selected as one of the prize winners for that. But the TT organizers have given us 10 video passes for it, so we're going to give them away to some of our Patreon supporters. And other than that, we're going to have the British Grand Prix, or the Grand Prix of the United Kingdom, this weekend, and that means that Paddock Note shows will be on with David, Neil and Adam. We've obviously had our Silverstone preview show with Cal Crutchlow joining us for that as well, so that was a great show. And then we'll have nightly Paddock Note shows, we'll have our review show for that, and hopefully next week I'll be able to try and corner Kyle White to be able to get Kyle to join us as a TT preview as well. So, Gordo, thanks for joining us as ever on the podcast.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Enjoyed every second.
And a big thank you to Renthal Street and Pole Position Travel for supporting us on the podcast. Check out polepositiontravel.com if you want to go to a World Superbike race or a MotoGP race and be able to see the options available to you for it.